Hello students, welcome to Renu's Englishpedia for class 12th. Today we are going to do the chapter Deep Water written by William Douglas. In this chapter, William Douglas describes his own personal meeting with fear and how he overcame it. After listening to the explanation, you will not only be able to strengthen your decision making skills, but you will also be able to overcome your fears in a constructive manner. William Douglas was born on 16th October 1898 in USA and he died on 19th January 1980. Professionally, he was an American jurist and a politician, and he was the personal advisor to the American President Franklin D. Roosevelt. When Douglas was 3 or 4 years old, he went to California Beach with his father. Over there, he was knocked down and swept away by the waves. Although it was not dangerous, but father laughed, and this fostered fear of water in William's mind. When William was 10 or 11 years old, he decided to overcome his fear by learning to swim at the YMCA pool. He could have gone to Yakima rivers to learn swimming, but his mother had warned him against it as there had been many drownings in the Yakima river. On the other hand, the YMCA pool was quite safe as it was only 2 or 3 feet at the shallow end and had a depth of 9 feet at the deep end. He used water wings, and as time passed, he began to feel quite comfortable in the water. However, it was not to be for long. Another horrifying misadventure occurred at the YMCA swimming pool. William had gone to the pool and the pool was quite isolated as there was no one over there. The water was still and clean, so he decided to wait for the others to arrive and sat at the side of the pool. However, a boy of 18, muscular and having a beautiful physique, tossed him into the deep end of the pool. Although he was frightened out of his wits, he made a plan to save himself. He decided that when he would reach the bottom, he would make a big jump and try to reach the surface. On reaching the surface, he would lie flat on the surface and would paddle to the edge of the pool. However, the reality was quite different. He went down very slowly and the 9 feet felt like 90. When his feet hit the bottom, he collected all his strength and leaped upwards, but failed to rise up. He had thought that he would spring upwards like a cock, but when he opened his eyes, he saw nothing, and now the water looked dirty yellow, that is, it looked uninviting. This made him panicky, and he tried to clutch at the water in the hope of grabbing a rope. He struggled to come up to the surface, but he couldn't do so. He was suffocating and he swallowed a lot of water and was almost choking. His legs felt heavy, paralyzed and rigid. He was pulled into the water by a greater force. He screamed, but no voice could be heard. His fear and exhaustion dominated him. It felt like a nightmare. He had lost all breath and his lungs ached. His head throbbed and he was getting dizzy. He still had a sense of optimism, presence of mind and determination. He planned again to spring up from the bottom of the pool and come to the surface. The water was turning dark, which symbolizes dangers, from yellow color. Terror seized him. He screamed, but the screams in his throat were frozen. Only his heart and the pounding in his head made him realize that he was still alive because his entire body was paralyzed. He first felt fright, which turned to panic and then finally into terror. The 3 emotions he felt while going down 3 times. He shook and trembled with fright. He tried to call for help to call for his mother, but it was of no use. This was the first time that he had a very near experience of death. He almost went into a trance. Trance means that when you are conscious but you are unable to respond. The blackness swept over his brain. The emotions were fading, and terror, panic, and fear were finally wiped out. It was now quiet and peaceful. He was drowsy, tired, and wanted to go to sleep. He started hallucinating. He felt as if he was in the tender arms of his mother. He fell into oblivion. Oblivion means complete unconsciousness, and he thought he had died. And finally, the curtain of life fell. When William regained consciousness, he was lying by the side of the pool and he was vomiting. Although he had been saved, but this incident had a tremendous physical impact on him. When he returned home, he felt weak, he was trembling, and he was emotionally hurt. He cried in his bed. He couldn't eat, and his fear haunted him. Apart from the physical impact, this incident also left a great mental and emotional impact on his mind. The author was traumatized by the events so deeply that it affected his whole future. He now started leading a half life. He never went back to the pool. He feared water and avoided every situation that made him encounter water. He couldn't fish anymore. He was unable to go for canoeing, boating, and swimming. By and by, as time passed, this half-life and this fear of water started pricking at him. He decided to overcome his fears and achieve his goals. For this, he hired an instructor and learned how to swim. He practiced 5 days a week for an hour each day. He attached a rope to his belt, which, with the help of a pulley, pulled him back and forth across the pool. When he put his face in the water, however, the icy horror and the terror grasped him, but he still tried to overcome it and face his fears. He soon learned to exhale in water and inhale when he came up to the surface. Slowly, he shed part of the panic. He gradually relaxed and finally he could command his legs also. When his lessons were over, he decided to have a final try. In order to completely conquer his fear, he went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire. He swam in the lake and he could perform the crawl, the breaststroke, the side stroke, and the backstroke. However, when he reached the middle of the lake, he saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation returned, but this time he had the courage to face and laugh at his terror and move on. Later, when he was able to dive into warm lake, he shouted with joy that he had finally conquered his fear. This experience delivered a very important lesson. Roosevelt, to whom Douglas was an advisor and also a friend, had told him, "All we have to fear is fear itself." The author's fear of death nearly robbed him of the joys of living. He couldn't enjoy with his friends and was forced to live a half life. He realized fear has more to do with the mind. If you are once able to command your fear, then fear loses its hold over you. One must have the willpower to face fear and never give up. If you overcome this fear, then and only then will you realize the value of life over death. With this important lesson, we come to the end of the chapter. I hope that you liked my video. If you did so, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to Reno's Englishpedia for Class 12th.